Scenografilom, Marilanum Bino. Well, that's going to be quite helpful, so thank you very much. Bino Marilanum. Scenografilom. In this case, I'll be you until next time, and thanks. Very well. So, I'll see you. So, I think I should have the hang of this. So, let's try it. C'est fou ce qu'ils sont fous ces playboys italiens. Ils en perdent tout leur latin. Look at that! In a place that's built on a swamp, there's all made to go with the water. There's ruins of an ancient, more advanced civilization, and is that Gorgonzola, everyone's favorite Blizzard Cross produce. So clearly, I can only be in one place, the land of the crazy people. Sono pas di questi romani, Italy. So I guess I'm going to use the opportunity and on of course the old entry point of the Bloody Death and the first attempt to talk about medieval medicine. So let's start with the basics. So the medieval medicinal knowledge was roughly based on the idea of balance within the body. This balance had its theory mostly derived from the theory of the humors, which date back to the Greeks. Because sadly, despite the Egyptians being the best in terms of medicine during antiquity, and even the Greeks, that is quite an accomplishment. Even the Greeks recognized the Egyptians as better, but sadly, it's the Greek way that went on. So we've got the theory of humor, so blood, phlegm, yellow and black bile. And the idea is that they must be in the good proportion or the body gets sick. That was the main theory. Of course, there was also the theory of miasma, so that bad odors would transmit disease, which is tied to the fact that a lot of bad things tend to have a bad smell. So stuff that rot will smell bad. Sometimes diseased people or an healthy one will have a bad smell. Toxic gas sometimes have a bad smell, especially when it's based on sulfur. Lots of bad things have a bad smell. And this association led, of course, to the idea that disease spread by bad smells. It is not really accurate, but it denotes still a certain logic. And yes, there is urban contamination that exists. It's just that it didn't fully grasp as much as we do, or urban contamination spread. So for them, bad smell. Back to the humors, that's the theory, but then they developed things and they reached a point where they knew how to keep the body in balance with alimentation and other things. So most of the medicine of the time would have been reestablishing the balance in the body, which technically is more of a treating the symptoms thing, but sometimes in helping the symptoms it helps the body itself. And of course, on top of all of that, they also had the traditional knowledge, so the results of trial and error for millennia, that they knew what they do what. So, okay, you die while eating that, we won't eat that. That seems to make you feel better. Okay, we know it helps you feel better, and so on. They of course had an idea of hygiene. They washed off then, and even if they didn't fully bath, they would still wash their hands and face, and of course clean their food. Of course, hygiene was tied to the idea of miasma, therefore bad odors. Not only, but if something smells bad, you don't want it, and of course you don't want to smell bad because that's just spreading stuff, and therefore you get clean, you wash. So as you see, it all ties together, and in the end, even if not quite our medicinal knowledge nowadays, it wasn't so bad. So now let's go to the plants. So for plants, these books that are here are an example of the succession of advancements, should I say, or size of medieval knowledge. And this is a list of analysis of the various remedies by Saint Hildegard de Bingen according to modern science, and this is a bunch of plants with the medicine that is made out of them. In fact, there's a few of the plants in KCD, sadly not all of them are there, but quite a few. Why all this? Simply put, if a plant did something, most of the time they would know it. So if a plant helps you with this disease or that illness or this other condition, they would know. The only cases would be some that would not be as apparent. For example, carrots giving you a better sight will not be known because it's too subtle into over a long time on a similar point. And garlic being antibacterial will not been as well known. Otherwise, if they fully understood and knew what to associate the antibacterial things with, they would have made super garlic. I'll come back on that later. Yeah, they had plenty of remedies. Of course, the remedies, as I mentioned earlier, bodily balance, so the chemical balance of the body. Your remedy would have that in a way or another. One of the ways, of course, is treating the symptoms. So if you have a cough, usually the cough is because of something else, but by taking care of the cough, it helps with your body, which can then better fight against the other thing. In some cases, some plants do act against this or that. And of course, on top of helping the balance, there's also accelerating processes. Your skin naturally heals at a certain rate, but a proper remedy could help it heal faster. And that will bring me to a slight tangent on Kingdom Come Deliverance. As far as to do something for the game that was interesting gameplay wise, they did a really good job for the alchemy. Granted, it should rather be called pharmacology because actual medieval alchemy was slightly different. What they did was mostly metal related. What they do in KCD are potion, that would be pharmacology, because apothecaries are medieval pharmacists, with the nuance that nowadays pharmacists mainly gives you medicine. Back then they could do the whole thing, so analyze you to see what disease you have, make the proper medicine and give it to you. And of course, going back to Kingdom Come, just to give you an idea of how well it's made. The main healing potion, the Marigold Decoction, is of course based on Marigold, and what it actually does is that with the petals you make an onga, so some type of cream that you can put on your skin, and it helps the skin scar, so it accelerates the healing of the skin. There are also plants that have anticoagulant properties that might have been better for a healing potion, but yes, Marigold does have actual healing properties. It's just that you make something that goes on your skin, not a potion that you drink. But of course, there's the gameplay to take into account, and it's a pretty decent thing. And from Kingdom Come Deliverance back to medicine, there's three types of healing related jobs. The first two are of course the apothecaries, mainly the Ratte one, that's in a bunch of quests, and the herbalist. So herbalists were the people in charge of gathering and selling the medicinal herbs. This was a known and respected profession. Someone did that, basically you knew that they knew this stuff. They were specialized in the plant knowledge, so of course that paper with it. It would have been considered based on science up to a point. It's the tradition-based science according to the daily type, but I should say science more for the apothecaries. Nonetheless, herbalists, they knew their stuff, they had to train to memorize the thing, and it was a respected job. And another respected job, of course, there would have been the wise women who helped give birth to babies, who were so respected that in fact the church pretty much made sure that they were, aside from the priest, the only one that could baptize someone. Why? Because babies can have problems, sometimes the mother too, so giving certain sacraments in such cases would be important, and so the wise women could baptize. Adding to that the fact that witchcraft was considered a superstition, the prejudice that you likely heard that the herb woman would be believed to be a witch making white potion and casting spell. That's bullshit. No one would have believed that unless they were the village idiots. And if someone made an accusation, actually exactly like in the game, it would have been out of jealousy. And let's not forget that beside there was a church saying, are you really accusing her of witchcraft? Witchcraft isn't real, dumbass. It's a superstition. Maybe not the dumbass part, but you know what I mean. They went against it because that's just silly. Herborist would have been more of a tradition-based job. So, you know, you've got your son, your daughter, whatever. You teach the kid how to do it. Then the step above, the fully professional one that would have properly taken an apprentice and that could be part of guilds and whatnot. You have the apothecary. As mentioned, they're pharmacists. They make medicine. So the herb woman would gather the marigold. The apothecary is the one that would make the potion, the unguent, and sell it to the person because you have to prepare it in a very special way. And of course, there were the plant-based medicine. There were also a few other things. Third job in the game is more that of a surgeon. I will come back later. But in real life, there was a third level of healer, and it could have been the university trained doctor, because yes, medicine was one of the 4 big categories in university, along with theology, law, and philosophy, in the old sense that include a lot of things. Universities are for another time, of herborist, apothecary, and university grade healer. These are the 3 main levels, I should say, and with these, of course, varying level of pay, respect, and so on, but all do, of course, have been considered important jobs within a society. And as I said, they help the balance of the body, they help accelerate the processes, and Kingdom Come did a nice job. On to the next part, the surgeon. So for surgery, the surgeons, just like for the plant-oriented healers, you could have found 3 types. First of all, those who learned on the job, on the side. For example, in the mercenary camp, you'd have someone who learned how to be a surgeon, either by contact with someone, trying things, whatever the reason, who could have been able to do something. Sometimes it was because it was the group barber, because the barbers, so those who did the beard, sometimes the hair, would pick up surgery, sometimes get training as they do their job to be able to do that on the side. Of course, I say barbers, but there would have been other professions too. And people think of butchers. Depending on what you do, there are cases that would have led you to this. So these were those who learned on the side. Then, of course, you would have the properly trained surgeons. So a proper professional likely had an apprenticeship. He's fully trained for that, likely has his own place. And then, of course, you have the university doctor. So he learned the plants, he learned also the surgery, does everything. He was at university. Going back to the barber, is likely what we have in Kingdom Come Deliverance. In the bathhouse, you can have your hair in bird arranged because of course the game needed customization. So after staying beardless for a week, now and poof, instant beard. That technically implies that there is a barber, and the bathhouse is also the place where you can get your wounds treated, and both together points to the fact that either the bathhouse owner, one of the girls, or someone else that we don't see or has some side job, is actually the barber / surgeon of the bathhouse. Of course, whatever your wounds, you get instantly fully healed. This is a bit more of a video gamey thing, but yeah, you gotta have fun gameplay. But logic-wise, it makes perfect sense and is something realistic. So all bathhouses were very common, and having side services was a good way to conduct business. And if not, the barber would have his own barber shop and still do surgery on the side. As for what a surgeon could actually be able to do, sure, they did not have a lot for modern knowledge and tools, but they were far from being primitive. They had a lot of quality tools, most of them being ancestors in one way or other, when not following the same thing as we have today. In some cases, of course, we do have some extra new stuff. If you had a cut, they knew how to patch it up. Broken bone, they can help set it, put everything back, then stitch you up. Then, of course, go to the apothecary to get the potion, balms and whatnot that to accelerate the healing, but that's after they went on you to set you right. You get a projectile in you, they can remove the projectile. A lot of tools were developed exactly for that, removing projectile. Of course, if you have a very important organ that gets pierced that they couldn't heal, or let's say you get an arrow that arrives into a very important organ such as the liver, maybe in the intestine, then it spills out in an important place. Sure, that would have been a special case, but get an arrow on your shoulder, no problem, it can patch up. Then of course there were the bloodletting, so the bleeding. Now most of you imagine bleeding as the go-to solution where they go, you have some pain, there's a bunch of leeches. Real bleeding would have been done in some specific circumstances because either what they removed was not blood that was in a place it shouldn't be, or yes, that would have been trying to bring balance by removing bad blood to let the body produce new clean one. But the latter really have been an exceptional case on someone who could take it, because if you didn't have a lot of blood, it would have been dangerous to remove it from you, and it wouldn't just bleed you at any occasions. You had to be able to take it. There are specialized medicine, so for the bad blood, it's more of we do a lot of stuff, and in it maybe include the bleeding, but mostly remove things that are not in their place. An example that happened to me is that while fencing, I got an injury on the thumb. I had a bubble of blood, a decidedly sized one at that went between my nail and the tub itself. It became so painful I could not sleep, and I do have a pretty decent pain tolerance, so of course I went to get checked. A hole was made in my nail, the blood was removed from under my nail. I had a bleeding to heal a sore date. Yes, I know it's counterintuitive, but it happens, and then the problem was solved. And that's an example of what a bleeding would have been like. Of course, then there were the amputations, so if Sophie was too badly injured that could not be patched up, sometimes you do have to amputate. Also, there's a beginning of an infection. If the infection can just be removed like that. Of course, if you do have just a little something, yes, that can be removed. It's not too bad, but something too bad, amputating prevent the spreading. If the wound's too bad, you have to amputate. They could do that very professionally. Of course, compared to today, there are cases where we don't have to amputate that they do, or that we can do things that they can't. For example, let's say you're doing some woodwork, the saw cut off one of your finger. Nowadays, we could put the finger back. They couldn't, but they would make sure your wound wouldn't get worse. Because yes, I mentioned that hygiene. Surgeons back in the day would know how to clean the wound. Sure, it was not ethylic alcohol, but they knew how to clean. Same with their tool, something that would be lost later on. If they had to amputate and clean amputations more than we do now, they still did it very well. Overall, if I was injured, it was not something that there's a major difference between then and now, and a medieval surgeon would pop in, I would trust one to take care of me. Of course, depending on the wound, I would likely go check up a modern professional later on, but on the case, as a part of the emergency, I would trust one. Now, to close off the category, I do have two stories. One is an outlier and one is a word case from after. The outlier is Richard the Lionheart, who got a crossbow bolt in the shoulder that caused his death. So the bolt itself wasn't deadly, but it was in the evening. It was a deep wound, and so by candlelight, the surgeon was one of the mercenaries would likely just learned on the job, remove the bolt. He could do that even if he wasn't a fully trained guy, a fully trained professional. And the real problem is that, first of all, it took long and was hard because of the specificities of the wound and the time when it happened. But there's also a piece of the point that broke off, and after the bolt was removed, even if they knew a piece broke off, Richard did not go back at a later point to get someone more professional, despite the fact that he could have afforded someone from a university to come in and just arrange everything. They did not do. Granted, the warding of the pain, dulling the pain, was not something that would have been very common. Sure, there would have been this or that produced like alcohol, but more of our side things it wasn't like today where we just put the mask or make an injection and then the person no longer feel pain. We weren't at that point. So of course, he didn't have the wound rechecked and the bit of metal infected it, and because of that, he died of gangrene. Now, this is an outlier case because usually you get it in the shoulder, you were fine. The surgeon would remove the projectile and you would patch you up. Yeah, sure, you'd take some time to heal your shoulder, but you'd go on with your life. Now for the other story that I want to tell, technically it does happen after, since it is in the Renaissance, so a period of backwardness in terms of medicine where things regressed, but this is one of the few advances, and the stories would have been almost medieval-like if it wasn't for its sad days. So Louis XIV got a fistula anal, which could be best described as a deadly super butt wart. His doctor had to arrange it, so he had to develop very specialized tool for this specific condition, but eventually managed. He did the operation, he saved the king, so already sad story because the king Louis XIV was at Iran, and then Louis XIV had himself commissioned a song that was part of a style called the Te Deum, and that specific Te Deum was eventually corrupted to be England's national anthem, because of course they would steal rather than create. Not really medieval, but I kinda like it. It kinda fits despite being out of time. So back on the matter, since we already introduced the Renaissance, let's go upon the origin of all the myths.